Hello, third graders, and welcome to Lesson 7-1 for math. My name is Mrs. Graham. I'll be teaching your math for e-learning. At this time, you should have already watched the visual learning video that follows along with this example. If not, then pause this video and go back and watch the visual learning video first. You're introduced to some new vocabulary, data, and a scaled picture graph, and a scale. So again, this is your data. Your data are the information recorded, and your scale was down here. The scale lets you know what the symbols represent. The key explains the scale used in the graph. So for this scale, remember that 2 hockey sticks represented 2 teams. 1 hockey stick represents 1 team. So after the visual learning video, we'll go back to page 253, so turn back 1 page, and let's look at Solve and Share together. Students in Jorge's class took a survey of their favorite cereals and made this graph to show the results. Name at least 3 facts about the information in the graph. So again, we have a picture graph because we are using pictures to represent our data. In this picture graph, we are using 2 spoons to represent 2 votes, 1 spoon to represent 1 vote. So looking at this example, let's name 3 facts about the information in the graph. Any 3 facts. Your 3 facts may be different than what I come up with here as we do the video. I'm going to look at Berry Crunch first. And I notice that there are 2, 4, 6, 8, plus 1 more, 9 people voted for Berry Crunch as their favorite cereal. So how I got that? 2 spoons represents 2 votes, plus 2 more, plus 2 more, plus 2 more, plus the 1 spoon represents just 1 vote. So I'm counting by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, plus 1 more equals 9. So that would be 1 fact about the information in this graph. I could skip down to nuts and wheat. Let's count that one. We're counting by 2s when we see 2 spoons. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 votes. We do the same for each. Honey granola, 2 plus 2 is 4. Corn puffs, 2, 4, 6 plus 1 equals 7 votes. So the thing to keep in mind with your picture graphs is the key down at the bottom will tell you what each picture represents. So it's important to look at that. And then also, we first looked at our picture graph. This is called the title, Favorite Cereals. It tells us what the picture graph represents. Over in the left-hand column in this case, our favorite cereals are Berry Crunch, Honey Granola, Corn Puffs, and Nuts and Wheat. We read it across, so Berry Crunch goes across, and we add the pictures to get the total. Again, using the key to tell us what each picture represents. All right, we will move on to page 255. And we're going to see another type of graph called a scaled bar graph. A scaled bar graph uses bars. We were using pictures previously in a picture graph, but a scaled bar graph, these are our bars, to represent and compare information. This bar graph shows the number of goals scored by different players on a hockey team. The scale shows the units used. On this bar graph, each horizontal grid line represents 2 units. Every other grid line is labeled 0, 4, 8, and so on. For example, the line halfway between 4 and 8 represents 6 goals. So let's take a look and see what they mean by that. We always start at 0, and if you notice, we skip a line and jump to 4. That tells me that this bar represents halfway between 0 and 4, which would be 2. We've got another bar here in between 4 and 8. So 0, 2, 4. That's right, we'll count by 2s. 6, 8. This must represent 10, 12, 14, 16, and 18. It's always, I think, helpful to fill those in as you're working, especially when you go to read them and you notice that this bar didn't have anything written there, but now it does because we filled it in. So it's easy to note that this is Alex scored 18 hockey goals because his bar goes all the way up to the line that represents 18. We look at our next player, Cindy. We go to the top of her bar, we follow it all the way across, and again, we've already filled in, this bar did not have a number, but we filled in 14 there because 14 is halfway between 12 and 16. Then we look at Jack. Jack's bar goes all the way across here to 8. 8 goals were scored by Jack. And then Reggie, 16 goals as we follow the top of his bar across. Now, bar graphs are very easy to note who scored the most in this example, who scored the least, and then to find the differences between them. If we were to find the differences between them, we would subtract. For example, Alex scored 18 goals, Reggie only scored 8. How many more goals did Alex score than Jack? We would take our 18, take away 8 to get 10 goals. Now this was just an example I made up. This was not a question asked. We will go to the guided practice and answer some of the questions. In 1 and 2, use the bar graph above. How many goals in all did Alex and Reggie score? Now in all tells me that I'm going to add them together. So again, Alex scored 18 goals and Reggie scored 16 goals. We didn't get that earlier, we said 14. 16 goals. So how many in all? We will add the 18 plus 16 to get how many were scored in all. 8 plus 6 is 14, so we're going to bring down our 4, carry the 1. 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. So 34 goals in all for Alex and Reggie, because Alex scored 18, Reggie scored 16. That's how many in all. Let's look at the next one. Do you know how? Explain how to find how many fewer goals Cindy scored than Alex. So again, Alex scored 18. Cindy scored 14. So fewer tells me that I'm going to subtract 18, take away 14. We subtract 8, take away 4 is 4. So Cindy scored 4 goals fewer than Alex. When we looked at our pictograph on page 253 with the spoons, we're able to see which cereals were the favorite. You would go to the one that's furthest. Just like in a bar graph goes the highest, and we could see the least favorite here would be the honey granola, even before we counted them and could compare the numbers. So a bar graph, I think, visually shows you greatest and least, and is just a little easier to interpret. So your independent practice, what you're going to do is you're going to answer 3 through 5 using the picture graph here, hours of light usage at Sports Center, and the number of hours lights are on each week. Here are the rooms. Here's your key. Each light bulb represents 10 hours. This is a picture of a half light bulb, half of 10 is 5, so a half a light bulb would represent 5 hours. Always understand your graph before you try to answer your questions by reading the title, looking at your key, and understanding what each symbol represents. So you're going to do 3, 4, and 5 on page 255. Then you're going to turn over and you're going to do number 9 and number 10 on page 256. Please join the math meeting on Thursday morning, and we'll answer any questions you may have and go over a few more items.